and welcome to In Depth. I'm Teena Jha. The Indian Space Research Organization has finally announced the date of its much-awaited Chandrayaan 2 mission to the moon. From 15 July, the country's second lunar mission will spend 58 days in various stages of orbit to send its modules to the moon. The lunar landing is expected to take place on 6th or 7th of September on the unexplored south polar region of the moon, which will be the first for any country. So far, all landings on the moon, human as well as non-human, have been in areas close to its equator. With Chandrayaan 2, India will become only the fourth country to land a spacecraft on the moon. The Chandrayaan 2 mission is supported by more than 500 academic institutions and 120 industries that contributed 60% of the 603 crore rupee cost of Chandrayaan 2 and 80% of the 375 crore rupees cost of the geosynchronous launch vehicle Mark III. What makes it even more significant is that Chandrayaan 2 will be India's first interplanetary mission to be steered by two women, Project Director M. Vanita and Mission Director Ritu Karidhil. In fact, women make up 30% of the Chandrayaan 2 team. Today's In-Depth focuses on India's second odyssey to the moon. We also discuss how the Chandrayaan 2 mission will enter uncharted territory, offer scientific insight about the origin and evolution of the moon. So India's second lunar expedition is expected to shed light on a completely unexplored section of the moon, its south polar region. The Chandrayaan 2 mission will help us gain a better understanding of the origin and evolution of the moon, as it will conduct detailed topographical studies, comprehensive mineralogical analysis, and a host of other experiments on the lunar surface. In addition, it will also attempt a challenging exercise, a soft landing on the moon. India's second sojourn to the moon, Chandrayaan 2, will start on 15 July. According to Isro Chairman K. Sivan, the lunar spacecraft will lift off at 2:51 am from the Satish Dhawan Space Center at Sriharikota in Andhra Pradesh. The launch will take place on board the GSLV Mark III vehicle, the heaviest rocket built by Isro. Its lander and rover will touch down on the moon's surface either on 6th or the 7th of September.
Now we are getting ready for a next major mission from India, that is Chandrayaan 2. Chandrayaan 2 mission is planned to have the launch by July 15th, early morning, 2 o'clock and 51 minutes. That was the launch time, what we are planning. And the Chandrayaan 2 mission contains three components. That is the rover, which is having 27 kg. And we have next one is a lander that's having about 1.4 ton. This rover is kept inside the lander. This lander is kept on an orbiter. The orbiter is the 2.4 ton. The total composite module is mass about 3.8 ton. And this composite body is kept on the heat shield of the GSLV Mark III vehicle. And then we will be launching that one. This launch only I am telling on 15th July, 2 o'clock and 51 minutes early morning. And once they are launched, it is launched in the high eccentric orbit with a 38,000 kilometer orbit size.
It will land in September. It will carry a rover. It will be an extension of Chandrayaan 1. And the entire world is very keenly looking forward to its to the kind of information and inputs which it procures.
According to Isro, Chandrayaan 2 will be injected into an Earth-parking 170 into 40,400 kilometer orbit. A series of maneuvers will raise its orbit and put Chandrayaan 2 on the lunar transfer trajectory. After entering Moon's sphere of influence, onboard thrusters will slow down the spacecraft for lunar capture to restrain it in the Moon's gravitational field. A series of orbital maneuvers will then set Chandrayaan-2 into 100 and 100 kilometers orbit around the moon. On the day of landing, the lander will separate from the orbiter and perform complex maneuvers of rough braking and fine braking. Imaging of the landing site region prior to landing will help find safe and hazard-free zones. The lander will finally land near South Pole of the Moon on 6 September 2019. Subsequently, the rover will roll out and carry out experiments on lunar surface for the duration of 1 lunar day, that is equal to 14 Earth days. The orbiter will continue its mission for 1 year. The nearly 1,000 crore rupees mission is the most complex one in the history of Isro.
Once that lander landed, the next important event is the door for the rover will open and slowly rover will come out and land on the moon, the lunar surface. From the time of landing of the lantern on the surface to the rover to come out to land on the lunar surface, it will take about 4 hours because it is making very slow movement. Subsequently, the rover will be roving around the moon on its own propulsion. Now, we have 3 bodies. One is the orbiter going around the moon in 100 kilometers, and lander is landed at one place, and that is at a static. And third body is the rover. It is moving around the moon with a speed of 1 centimeter per second.
Chandrayaan-2 has several science payloads to expand the lunar scientific knowledge through a detailed study of topography, seismography, mineral identification and distribution, surface chemical composition, thermophysical characteristics of topsoil, and composition of the tenuous lunar atmosphere, leading to a new understanding of the origin and evolution of the moon. The orbiter payloads will conduct remote sensing observations from a 100-kilometer orbit, while the lander and rover payloads will perform measurements near the landing site. Of the 14 payloads which Chandrayaan-2 will carry to the moon, 13 are indigenous and 1 is a passive payload of NASA. Chandrayaan-2 will make a landing at a site where no earlier mission has gone, near the South Pole of the Moon. It is a completely unexplored territory and therefore offers great scientific opportunity to see and discover something new. The South Pole of the Moon also holds the possibility of the presence of water, which is an aspect that will be probed by Chandrayaan-2. In addition, the area is also supposed to have ancient rocks and craters that can offer clues on the history of the moon and also fossil records of early solar system.
The entire country will benefited by the science what we got from this particular the mission, because we are going to the place where nobody else have gone. So we are expecting that a huge number of new signs, because like Chandrayaan-1 we have found water, like that some new signs we are expecting to be there. And this, the entire scientific community of the nation as well as the global scientific community also looking for this mission, eagerly waiting.
With an estimated weight of 3.8 tons, Chandrayaan-2 will also attempt a soft landing on the moon, adding to the complexity of the mission. If successful, India will join the United States, the former Soviet Union and China, the only 3 other countries to have achieved the feat so far. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Chandrayaan-2 is a fully indigenous mission that comprises of 3 modules, an orbiter, a lander named Vikram, and a rover named Pragyan. It will be launched on board a GSLV Mark III rocket, which is a 3-stage heavy lift launch vehicle designed to carry 4-ton class satellites into geosynchronous transfer orbit. Now, all 3 modules of Chandrayaan-2, the orbiter, lander and rover, are getting ready for launch on 15 July. The orbiter and lander modules will be interfaced mechanically and stacked together as an integrated module and accommodated inside the GSLV Mark III launch vehicle. The rover is housed inside the lander. The integrated module will reach the moon's orbit using orbiter propulsion module after its launch into Earth-bound orbit by GSLV Mark III. After the launch, it will take 58 days to reach the moon, and that's why the moon landing date is expected to be September 6th or 7th. Once Chandrayaan 2 reaches the lunar orbit, the lander, Vikram, will separate from the orbiter and soft land at the predetermined site close to the South Pole, which till now has not been explored by any country. The rover will then roll out for carrying out scientific experiments on the lunar surface. Instruments would also be mounted on the lander and orbiter for carrying out scientific experiments. After analyzing the content of the lunar surface, the rover will send data and images back to the Earth through the orbiter within 15 minutes. So altogether, there will be 13 payloads in the spacecraft, 3 payloads in rover Pragyan and 10 payloads in lander Vikram and orbiter.
Like Earth, Moon also there is day and night. But the only difference is that in the Moon, in a particular point, the day may last as long as 15 days and the night may last as long as 15 days. So there is a 15-day long day and 15-day long night. So if I choose a given point and if assume that it's at night time, landing there is going to be of no use, right? Because there will be no light and we can't take any photograph. I mean, we can't do many other spectral studies, many studies we cannot do. So you need sunlight. I mean, so you want to land when the place where you want to land is facing daytime. So basically, if you are looking at mineralogy mapping, you are using a remote sensing method to say that in this particular part of moon, perhaps there is iron. Let's say, for example, there is iron. But how do you know that it's actually iron? So you have something in remote sensing what is called as ground truthing. That is, you land in that place, check in few areas and find out whether your remote sensing data exactly matches with your interpretation. So your ground truth actually matches with your interpretation, then you make a generalization that in the rest of the moon also, it's hold good in the same way, right? So you need to have some kind of a ground truthing to ensure that our remote sensing is given as a right kind of detail. So that's what this is going to do. That's why you also have a rover.
According to a number of reports, the launch of Chandrayaan 2 was postponed further to July in the backdrop of Israel's unsuccessful attempt to land on Moon. Israel's Bereshit spacecraft crashed during lunar landing on 11th April this year. So Isro is cautious about Chandrayaan 2, its first mission to land on any celestial body. In fact, the landing of the 3,290-kilogram Chandrayaan 2 spacecraft will be much more difficult than Israel's Bereshit, which tried to touch down on a plain of solidified lava known as the Sea of Serenity, which has a flattened surface and more exposure to the sun. While Chandrayaan 2 will explore the South Pole, so far an uncharted territory. Only China's Chang'e 4 spacecraft had recently, in January, landed on the moon's far side, also known as the dark side, because it faces away from the Earth and is comparatively unknown.
One of the unique feature of this landing is India has been focusing on the South Pole on Moon. Whereas if you look at all the Apollo programs, I mean, or even the earlier Soviet programs, they have all landed on the equator of the Moon. So we are going to the pole, that is South Pole, where there is a huge belief that substantial amount of ice in the form of, I mean, in the shadow regions of craters of Moon are available. So if we really have a surface water, then it would be a good place if you want to do any activity on the surface of Moon.
Let's now talk about India's first lunar mission, the Chandrayaan 1. It carried 5 scientific payloads and also detected evidence of a hydrogen-oxygen chemical bond, the lunar water, and also examined radioactive elements on the surface that reflected the presence of ice on the moon. It provided Isro with a high-resolution map of the moon's surface. Here's a detailed report on the success of Chandrayaan 1 mission.
0 + 1 Chandrayaan 1 was India's first lunar probe, launched successfully by the Indian Space Research Organisation on 22nd October 2008 from Satish Dhawan Space Centre in Sriharikota. It was an unmanned spacecraft weighing 1,380 kilos, with onboard power of 700 watts, launched from PSLV C-11 launch vehicle. The satellite made more than 3,400 orbits around the moon. The spacecraft carried 11 scientific payloads built in India, UK, USA, Germany, Bulgaria and Sweden. The mission comprised an orbiter and an impactor. The spacecraft was designed to study the moon, including chemical, mineralogical and photogeologic mapping, orbiting around it at the height of 100 kilometers from the lunar surface. The mission provided a major boost to the Indian space program as India effectively researched and indigenously developed the technology to explore the moon. The main objectives of the mission were to design, develop, launch and orbit a spacecraft around the moon using an Indian-made launch vehicle, to conduct scientific experiments using instruments on the spacecraft which would yield results. Prepare a three-dimensional atlas of both the near and the far sides of the moon, mapping chemical and mineralogical features of the entire lunar surface at high spatial resolution, mapping particularly the chemical elements magnesium, aluminum, silicon, calcium, iron, titanium, radon, uranium and thorium. Increase scientific knowledge, test the impact of a sub-satellite on the surface of the moon as a forerunner to the future soft landing missions, detect water ice on the moon.
The launch of Chandrayaan 1 was a feather in the cap of Indian space establishment, particularly because in the first attempt itself, Chandrayaan was launched successfully, and it also went around the moon's orbit successfully. But then the real benefits came one after another. First of all, water was detected in the subsoil region. This was clear from the various instruments on board Chandrayaan 1. And then Chandrayaan also, through its terrain mapper, it found out that there is one underground tunnel, what they call lava tube, which is about 1.7 kilometer long and 120 meters in diameter. And such lava tubes are going to be very, very useful when one wants to look for lunar colony establishment, because then you can have people staying inside that lava tube. You could have oxygen circulating, proper air conditioning and sufficiently shielded from high energy particles.
Chandrayaan 1 detected evidence of water across the lunar surface. NASA's instrument, Moon Mineralogy Mapper, aboard Chandrayaan 1 helped to find the existence of water molecules on the lunar surface. Its findings also include confirmation of the magma ocean hypothesis, meaning the moon was once completely molten. Terrain mapping camera on board Chandrayaan 1 has recorded images of the landing site of US spacecraft Apollo 15. They have also enabled scientists to study interaction between the solar wind and a planetary body like Moon without a magnetic field. Chandrayaan 1's X-ray spectrometer has detected titanium, confirmed the presence of calcium and gathered the most accurate measurements yet of magnesium, aluminum and iron on the lunar surface. India emerged as the fourth country in the world to hoist its flag on the lunar surface. After almost a year due to several technical issues and contact failure, on August 29, 2009, the Isro officially declared the mission over. Chandrayaan 1 operated for 312 days against the planned 2 years, but was successful by achieving 95% of its planned objectives. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And let's now talk about India's successful space programs over the years. ISRO's journey began on 21st November 1963 with the launch of a small rocket from Thumba on the outskirts of Thiruvananthapuram. Over the years, the Indian Space Agency has launched satellites not just for the country, but also for other nations. So besides Indian satellites, Isro has sent 269 foreign satellites from as many as 32 countries into space. Not only this, India has also achieved success in reaching Mars, the first country to do so in its maiden attempt. So in our next report, let's take a look at all the missions successfully launched by Isro since its inception.
Space exploration in India began in 1960s. Dr. Vikram Sarabhai was a physicist and industrialist who initiated space research and helped develop nuclear power in India. He is also popularly known as the father of India's space program. Sarabhai was instrumental in establishing the Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad after returning from Cambridge in 1947. India launched its first sounding rocket from Thumba near Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala on 21st November 1963, marking the beginning of the Indian space program. It was in 1962 that the Indian National Committee for Space Research was set up. It laid the foundation of Indian Space Research Organization in 1969. After setting up ISRO, the government constituted the Space Commission. It established the Department of Space in June 1972 and brought ISRO under the Department of Space in September 1972. India launched its first satellite Aryabhat in 1975, and then in 1979 Bhaskar 1 was launched. Aryabhat weighed 360 kilograms. On 10th August 1979, ISRO launched a series of satellites and named the mission Rohini. The Rohini series had 4 satellites, all launched by the Satellite Launch Vehicle, and 3 that made it successfully to the orbit. Then Aryan Passenger Payload Experiment or RAPPLE was ISRO's first indigenous experimental communication satellite. It was launched on June 19, 1981. ISRO took a huge step by developing telecommunication satellite. The Indian National Satellite or INSAT system is one of the largest domestic communication satellite systems in Asia-Pacific region, with 9 operational communication satellites placed in geostationary orbit. It was commissioned in 1983. On August 30th, 1983, the INSAT-1B satellite was launched. Full operational capability was achieved in October 1983. Rakesh Sharma made history by becoming the first and only Indian to travel to space in a Soviet rocket that was launched on April 2nd, 1984. Then on 17th March 1988, ISRO launched its first remote sensing mission, IRS-1A. It was a part operational, part experimental mission to develop Indian expertise in satellite imagery. The first multi-purpose satellite, INSAT-2A, built by India, was successfully operationalized in August 1992. INSAT-2A-B of the INSAT-2 series of satellites was launched on July 23, 1993. These are all multi-purpose satellites for telecommunication. On 29 September 1997, ISRO launched its first fully operational satellite abroad, a locally developed rocket. India's Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle or PSLV slid into orbit an Earth imaging satellite after a textbook lift-off from Sriharikota Island. Kalpana 1 was the first dedicated meteorological satellite launched by ISRO using PSLV on September 12, 2002. Then ISRO launched GSAT-3, also known as EduSat, a communication satellite, on 20th September 2004. EduSat is the first Indian satellite built exclusively to serve educational sector. On December 22, 2005, ISRO successfully launched INSAT-4A from the European Ariane 5G launch vehicle of Arianespace. With 12 high-power Ku-band transponders, INSAT-4A was the first satellite to meet the requirement of direct-to-home television services, apart from carrying 12 C-band transponders to augment the INSAT capacity for communication and TV services. And with successful launch of Chandrayaan 1 on October 22, 2008, ISRO's historic moon mission began. It was sent in space through PSLV C-11. ISRO had another major success on July 1, 2013, when it launched IRNSS-1A navigation satellite. Along with this, India has stepped in to make its GPS system on the lines of America. It was on 5th November 2013 when India successfully launched its Mars Orbiter mission or Chandrayaan, a space probe orbiting Mars since 24 September 2014. The 350-ton Chandrayaan was scheduled to orbit Earth for nearly a month, building up the necessary velocity to break free from our planet's gravitational pull. The total cost of the project was 450 crore rupees, 1/6 of the cost of a Mars probe set to be launched by NASA in 13 days. IRNSS-1I was the 8th navigation satellite to join the IRNSS space segment launched by the Isro in April 2018. On February 15, 2017, Isro wrote a new chapter in the history of space research by creating a world record of launching 104 satellites simultaneously through PSLV C-37. It was the 38th successful mission of PSLV in a row. The total weight of all the 104 satellites carried on board PSLV C-37 was 1,378 kgs. PSLV C-37 blasted off first from the launch pad at the Satish Dhawan Space Center and first injected Carosat-2 series satellite into orbit, followed by the other 103 nanosatellites, including 96 from the US, in a gap of about 30 minutes. The GSLV Mark III, the heaviest rocket ever made by India and capable of carrying large payloads, was launched from Sriharikota on June 5, 2017. GSLV Mk3 was designed to carry 4-ton class of satellites into geosynchronous transfer orbit, which is about twice the capacity of GSLV Mark II. At the same time, India has made its place in the field of space technology as the world's #1 leading nations. On June 29, 2017, Isro launched GSAT-17, the heaviest satellite ever, weighing 3,477 kgs. On January 12, 2018, Isro successfully launched 31 satellites in a single flight. The PSLV carries 31 satellites in total from countries including India and 6 other countries. ISS, weighing about 380 kgs, was launched on November 29, 2018. It is an Earth observation satellite, primary goal to provide hyperspectral imaging services to India for a range of applications in agriculture, forestry as well as defense. On December 19, 2018, GSAT-7A was successfully launched. It is ISRO's 39th geostationary satellite carrying communication transponders. ISRO launched CalamSat V2 on January 24, 2018. It is a communication satellite built by the students of Space Kids India for ham radio transmission, a form of wireless communication used by amateurs for non-commercial activities. ISRO successfully launched EMISAT satellite along with 28 satellites from Sriharikota on 1st April 2019. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So that's it from us in today's edition of In Depth. We'll be back same time tomorrow with a focus on some other subject. You can also watch our program online on YouTube and Twitter. And don't forget to send your feedback and suggestions about our program. Thank you for your time.